Well, if you were frustrated that Pete Buttigieg didn't spend much time focusing on our transportation infrastructure, the FAA, air traffic control, basic things like potholes down Main Street of South Bend, Indiana, well, you've finally going to be happy knowing that Pete Buttigieg is really honed in and laser focused on the problems that we've experienced in the Department of Transportation. The problem is he's no longer Secretary of Transportation. All it took was for him to actually have to get out of the job for him to finally focus on doing the job that he didn't do for 4 years. But, he was on paternity leave. He was lactating and nursing his baby or something. Anyway, Pete Buttigieg took to social media, Elon Musk's X the Everything app, to criticize his successor, the Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, by playing onto these fears, preying on the fears of many Americans who are getting misinformation from the media that severe cuts in the FAA, there haven't been any, by the way, severe cuts at the FAA has made air travel less safe. This is the kind of fear-mongering that is so despicable. And by the way, look at his tweet here. The flying public needs answers. How many FAA personnel were just fired? What positions and why? That's the sort of thing where you can actually call him out on it and say, are you saying that things are unsafe? Are you saying that people shouldn't be able to, shouldn't fly right now because planes are going to start smashing into each other? Are you saying that Trump is making the FAA and air travel dangerous because of these cuts? And Pete Buttigieg can say, oh, I'm not saying any of that. I'm not saying that. I'm just asking questions. I'm just saying we have the right to know. That's all. That's all I'm saying. I'm just asking questions. What a duplicitous little jerk this guy is. He did nothing as Secretary of Transportation except ride on trains and complain about bridges being racist. Well, what I love about this Trump administration is that they let nothing go unanswered. They fight back. They defend themselves. There have been Republican presidents in the past who I think felt like, well, conservative talk radio hosts will defend me, so I don't need to say anything. Why do I need to get in and respond to people? Rush Limbaugh will do it, right? Bill O'Reilly will do it in prime time, so I shouldn't have to deal with it. Well, these guys are great. Sean Duffy, the replacement new transportation secretary, he responded immediately to questions, bullshit from Pete Buttigieg. He said, Mayor Pete, I love that he calls him mayor, by the way, pinnacle of his political career, was mayor of South Bend, Indiana, fourth largest city in Indiana, and he didn't even do a good job at that. Mayor Pete failed for 4 years to address the air traffic controller shortage and upgrade their outdated World War II era air traffic control system. In less than 4 weeks, we have already begun the process and are engaging the smartest minds in the entire world. Here's the truth. The FAA alone has a staggering 45,000 employees. Less than 400 were let go. So they have 45,000 employees at the FAA. They just fired 400, and Pete Buttigieg said, the American people deserve to know. And by the way, specifically saying the flying public needs answers. He's suggesting that air travel is less safe because of these cuts. 400 out of 45,000. And by the way, they were all probationary. That means that they had been hired less than a year ago. 0 air traffic controllers and critical safety personnel were let go. Mayor Pete chooses to use this amazing department that chose to use the amazing department that is so critical to America's success as a slush fund for the Green New scam and environmental justice nonsense. Not to mention that over 90% of the workforce under his leadership were working from home, including him. The building was empty. When we finally get a full accounting of his mismanagement, I look forward to hearing from him. Good for you, Sean Duffy. And let's not forget, during the middle of his tenure, he personally voiced his own concern about understaffing at air traffic control towers. This is on his watch.
How concerned are you?
I'm very concerned. We watch these things very closely. If you look at the last decade or so, you would see between 10 and 20 times a year, typically, that this would happen. This year, we're on track to have more than 20, and even one is one that I would not like to see happen.
That's him addressing near misses that happened, again, at a time when air traffic control towers are understaffed. They're not rehiring. They put a focus on equity and inclusion rather than on excellence and merit. And he did nothing about it other than do this lovely television interview at Ronald Reagan National Airport. That's the terminal at National Airport in Washington, D.C., where the tragic mid-air collision just occurred with that Black Hawk helicopter. I mean, he's there at the scene of the crime. And this was what, 2 years ago? Yeah, almost 2 years ago, this March in 2023, when he said, I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned. What did you do? Well, he spent a lot of money trying to get electric vehicle chargers installed. I mean, so you got that going for it. But the media is going nuts right now over these cuts at the FAA, and they're trying to fearmonger you. They're trying to make you think that it is less safe to travel by air because of Musk and because of Trump. Here's a perfect example. The Associated Press, Tara Kopp, you can see the post underneath Caroline Levitt's reply here. She wrote an article. It says FAA staff fired over the weekend included personnel that worked radar, landing, and navigational aid maintenance, among others. Hundreds were fired just weeks after a fatal midair collision in D.C. killed 67. One employee said they were harassed on Facebook by Doge. Okay, let's break this down. This is how journalists like at the AP, which somehow are claiming to be martyrs for the First Amendment right now, because they're being excluded from Oval Office interviews with the president because they refuse to call the Gulf of America the Gulf of America. This is how they get away with their lies, because it isn't really a lie. Look at this third sentence. Hundreds were fired just weeks after a fatal midair collision in D.C. killed 67. Now, the implication is clear that the people who were fired lead to less safe air travel and midair collisions. But of course, there's nothing in here, and there's nothing in her article, which I read multiple times, nothing connecting firings at the FAA or even employment status of any kind at the FAA with the midair collision. But it's factual. It's true. What she said is true. Hundreds were fired weeks after a fatal midair collision. That is an undeniable fact. But she's implying that there's some kind of connection between the two, which there is not. But this is the smarmy kind of lie that they try to get away with. But then the blatant lies, well, Caroline Levitt called her out. Caroline Levitt, the White House press secretary, said, fake news from AP. Doge doesn't have a Facebook page, and no air traffic controllers nor any professionals who perform safety critical functions were terminated. So the second one, I guess, is debatable, because some people are claiming that they had safety critical functions and they've been terminated, even though they were only on probation and had only worked there for less than a year. Set that aside for a minute. It should be pretty cut and dry whether Doge has a Facebook page. She specifically says one employee said they were harassed on Facebook by Doge. In fact, this is a portion of that article. I clipped this and saved it because I knew they were going to change it, which they did. We'll get to the change in a minute. But here's the original article. It says, the official Doge Facebook page started harassing me on my personal Facebook account after I criticized Tesla and Twitter, Spitzer Stadlander wrote in a post over the weekend on LinkedIn. Less than a week later, I was fired despite my position allegedly being exempted due to national security. All right. Think about this for a minute. This writer for AP just saw what this person wrote on LinkedIn, clipped it, and then put it in her article as if it was fact. I mean, I guess technically it is a fact that this person wrote this on LinkedIn, but is that journalism? Is that reporting? I mean, if Doge doesn't have a Facebook page, why would you include this in the article? Because, yeah, this person may have said that on LinkedIn, but if the person's wrong, you're just repeating an error. You're repeating a lie in your own Associated Press article. I thought Associated Press was the crown jewel of journalism in America. Well, of course, it's true that that Doge does not have a Facebook page. Any sentient, thinking, intelligent human being would know that. Why? Well, here's why. Who's the person running Doge? His name's Elon Musk. Other than Tesla and SpaceX and the Boring Company, what else does Elon Musk own? It's a pretty high-profile company. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's the old Twitter. Now it's called X. He owns his own social media platform. So why on earth would he start a Doge Facebook page? At the very least, that would require some investigation, right? You really think Elon Musk, when he took over and started Doge, he said, all right, first things first, let's create a Facebook page. It's just stupidity personified. But this writer, Tara Kopp at AP, it never occurred to her to fact check that. All right, so now here's the new version of the article. Spitzer Stadlander said that post drew the attention of a Facebook account labeled Department of Government Efficiency, which reacted with a laughing emoji. Soon after, he saw the same account reacting to much older posts through his personal Facebook feed. There are at least a half dozen Facebook accounts labeled Department of Government Efficiency, and it's unclear who operates any of them. Now, why even include that in your article, Associated Press? So basically you're saying this person tells me that a page that may or may not be the Department of Government Efficiency has been making fun of them on Facebook, although it's unclear if it has any connection to the Department of Government Efficiency. But we're going to report it anyway because we have an agenda against Elon Musk and Donald Trump. These people are awful. They're hacks. And this is the Associated Press, who, if you turn anywhere on cable news right now, they are martyrs for the First Amendment, because they're not allowed to go on Air Force One because they continue to erroneously report that the Gulf of Mexico is the Gulf of Mexico instead of Gulf of America. But we'll let Scott Jennings have the final word. Because if there's a dust-up between Pete Buttigieg and Sean Duffy, and whether flying is unsafe or whether in some way cutting employees at the FAA makes it unsafe for you to fly in an airplane, Scott Jennings should have the final word, shouldn't he?
There are 45,000 employees at the FAA. We're talking about fewer than 400 people, and he says 0 air traffic controllers and critical safety personnel were let go. So if that's true, I don't really have a problem with it, to be honest with you. I do like the idea of keeping the people who are in the direct chain of command of safety and the air traffic control system and so on and so forth. But I have a hard time believing that there is a single government agency that doesn't have a bloat of administrative personnel that we could probably do without. And I think that's why a lot of voters are happy that Donald Trump and Elon Musk are finally going through the federal government and trying to take out some of this bureaucracy that we probably just don't need. So I'm reading to you what Sean Duffy says. He's the Secretary of the Transportation. I have no reason to doubt his numbers.
That's right. So I love it when Scott Jennings actually brings facts to that table. There's one other fact, too, because you saw this other thing. You saw this unbelievable crash landing in Toronto, Canada, of this Delta jet that had a hard landing. The landing gear failed. It landed on its belly. Sparks start to fly. It flips over, lands on its back safely, and everybody walks away. Yes, there were some injuries, but no fatality. Remarkable. And, that's the sort of story that used to be cable news gold, right? They would get ratings on that because you've got great video, great story, happy ending. Everyone can relate to it, right? Oh, my God, you're right. But 10 minutes into coverage on CNN and MSNBC, there they go. They start blaming Musk, Trump, and cuts at the FAA. And nobody, no sane, rational human being is able to step up during the conversations on cable news and say, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, last I checked, Toronto is not yet part of the United States of America. Now, you may be advocating now for Trump's design to make Canada the 51st state, which is not something I'm interested in, by the way. I don't need Canada to be part of the United States of America. They've gotten fat and lazy and complacent with their mediocre socialized medicine, and they've lost their inherent instinctive love of firearms. I mean, they used to love guns up in Canada, but not anymore. I don't know how they're going to kill a moose, right, with a kitchen knife. Sad. They play lousy hockey. So the last thing we need is for Canada to be part of our nation. But in some way, apparently, these idiots on cable news blaming Trump and Musk and the FAA for a jet crash in Toronto, they all seem to think that Canada is part of America already. I mean, good for them. Well, one other thing about trying to bring up cuts at the FAA and air traffic controllers, with regard to this crash in Canada, which of course had nothing to do with air traffic control, whether it's American or Canadian. But there's one other item of note that might be worth some conversation on cable news. I'm sure you won't get it, but I'll share it with you because you're just a smart person. Air traffic control in Canada is not a function of the government. It's privatized. Yeah. The airlines spend money on it themselves to make sure that they operate in a safe manner because it's good for their business to make sure that things are run efficiently and properly, like any other business. The airlines have decided in Canada that they would pay for air traffic control, and they privatized it. And it's efficient, and their systems are not antiquated. You see, the reason why the FAA has not been able to get new computer systems is because it's run by the government. And the people who are in charge of appropriating those things, Congress, well, they never win re-election in their home district by modernizing the computer systems for air traffic control. Since they wanted to raise the FAA when it comes to this crash up in Canada, maybe they have a point. Maybe while we're making things more efficient here in America, maybe we should look at privatizing air traffic control. Just a thought, throw it out there. Let's have a conversation. Have you seen the news from economists forecasting a depression, not a recession, a depression by 2030? Here's what's happening. We have a perfect storm brewing. We've got Social Security and Medicare hitting a breaking point already, and the largest generation of retirees in America hitting retirement all at the same time. Plus, you got a smaller workforce, meaning a smaller tax base. That plus the growing national debt, the rising cost of living, you see the problem we're in right now, right? So you can either sit back and wait for Congress to fix it, or you can actually do whatever you can to protect your family's future. Gold can be a safe haven in hard economic times, and Birch Gold makes it easy to diversify a portion of your savings into physical gold. Birch Gold will help you transition an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. It doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. Protect your future today. Text my name, Larry, Larry, to 989898. You're going to get a free info kit on gold the second you do that, okay? You text my name, you get this free info kit. What else do you get for free? You're going to get a book called The Ultimate Guide for Gold in the Trump Era, and it's got a foreword written by Donald Trump Jr. There's no obligation for any of this. We just want to give you information. So text my name, Larry, Larry, to 989898. Thank you in advance for doing that today.